So I know y'all love it when I'm wrong, and today we're going to go over some times that I was wrong about camera gear purchases. We're going to go over the biggest waste of money that I've made on camera gear, but more importantly, we're going to go over the lesson that I learned in making these bad purchases to hopefully help you make some smart decisions when it comes to investing in your creativity. So let's talk about it. And big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. So I don't need to waste too much time on an introduction. The topic of this video is pretty self-explanatory and clear, so let's get into the first huge waste of money. This right here is a Leica SL2 battery grip, and this costs over $1,000. I can't remember the exact price, but I bought this new, and this thing, I did all the mental gymnastics possible to justify this purchase because the Leica SL2 has really bad battery. I'd go out on shoots and it would get to halfway and I'd lose the ability to record in Cinema 4K, which is a horrible feature of the SL2, and I thought this would solve that problem, which it did. But at the end of the day, spending over $1,000 on a camera accessory that's available on the secondary market for half that price, sometimes even less than that, is a terrible choice. So the lesson that I learned from this purchase is to look at the secondary market when it makes sense. Every other Leica camera I've ever bought has been purchased secondhand. I only buy used Leicas, and I should have taken my own advice and applied it to this because I would have saved a lot of money, and at the end of the day, a new battery grip is no different than one that's been gently used that's available for half the price. So look at the secondary market when it makes sense. I have nothing against battery grips. This did what it was supposed to do. I just paid way too much money for it, and I could have taken half of that money and put it into something that made a little bit more sense. Now, the second big waste of money is this right here, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Now, I purchased this camera to make a video about it because of all the hype surrounding this camera at the beginning of this year. It was like every time I opened Instagram, every time I opened TikTok, someone was using this. So I was very intrigued by it, and initially I planned on using this, but after having it in the rotation, I realized I have nowhere to use this. Like, it's just not something that makes sense for me. If I'm making, say, an Instagram reel and I want it to look high quality, I end up just bringing my camera because personally I feel like this doesn't achieve the same look that I want with other cameras. Now, with that said, I do stand by everything I said in the initial video I made about this. This is a very powerful tool, but you need a place to use it. And that's the lesson I learned in wasting the money on this. Don't idealize how you're going to use equipment. Actually have a need for it. So when you're buying camera gear, instead of saying, oh, if I buy this gear, I'll be able to do this, you want to look at it in the reverse. Say you're going out and you're working and doing certain things, and you say, man, I really have this gap in my workflow. I have this challenge, this issue. That's when you want to buy new gear. You don't want to buy new gear and then create a problem for it to solve, which is what I did with this. I just don't have a use for it, and it's going to be something that I end up selling. Now, the third big waste of money that I've made on camera gear is actually this Gitso Tripod right here. Now, this tripod is pretty awesome if I'm being honest. It's carbon fiber, it's very light, it's small. But here's the mistake that I made. I went and bought the cheapest Gitso tripod possible. You see, Gitso tripods are very expensive because of the carbon fiber, because they're light, and if you get more expensive ones, they're very sturdy. But me deciding to be cheap on this purchase, I got the cheapest one. And this feels like a very cheap tripod. It's not very stable, it doesn't secure my camera very well, I have a lot of issues using it, and now for most of these YouTube videos, unless I'm going out traveling and I need to fit something in my suitcase, I end up using just like a basic $100 tripod, and it honestly works a lot better than this. So the lesson I learned in this purchase is if you're gonna go expensive, like if you're gonna buy a premium product like that Gitso tripod because you want the carbon fiber, you want the lightweight, don't cheap out and go with the cheaper option. Just be willing to fully invest in the thing that you want and you'll get it. Instead of spending $800 or whatever I paid for this and then having to go back and say, well, maybe I need to buy the better one because I cheaped out, and now you're spending essentially double what you would have spent on your initial investment. So the lesson here is if it's expensive, just buy the one where you'll have to buy it once instead of buying the cheap one, which you eventually have to replace because it's going to cost you more money in the long run. And before we get into more ways that I've wasted money, we got to talk about something that's been actually a huge asset for my business and made me a lot of money, and that is my website, evanramp.com, which is built built with today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace allows artists like you and me with no web design experience to create a beautiful looking website with ease and add a more professional element to our business. Squarespace has award-winning drag and drop templates, and they have a new feature called Fluid Engine that literally allows you to just move things around on the page to customize your template however you see fit. And Squarespace has new AI tools which can help build a website for you. Now, on top of that, Squarespace gives you the ability to showcase your work through a portfolio. You can sell things like I sell my presets and my photo books on Squarespace, and you can even sell courses on Squarespace. And I have a free course that I built on Squarespace. It's so easy to use their course features. It has all the same elements that make Squarespace templates so great, but applies it to digital e-learning. And honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what Squarespace can do for you as a business and as a creator. So what I recommend is going to squarespace.com/EvanRamp, starting a free trial, try it out for yourself, build a trial site, and when you're ready to sign up, you can use code EvanRamp to save 10% on your website or a domain. That's squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial and begin experiencing all the great things Squarespace can do for you. And when you're ready to sign up, use code EvanRamp to save 10% at checkout. Big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Now, the next thing on this list is kind of an interesting one because it impacts so many people and you don't even realize that the cost is adding up. This is the mistake of wasting money on memory cards as well as cheap filters. Now, specifically polarizers are filters that can be really good if you're willing to spend money on them. I've noticed in my own work when I use a polarizer that's high level, it looks so much better than cheap polarizers. And the same thing goes with ND filters. When you're using a more expensive advanced ND filter, the result is way better than cheap ND filters. You get less color casting and it's just a better looking image. Now, the issue that I ran into when I first started out, and a lot of people run into, is they buy multiple cheap polarizers, cheap ND filters, and just cheap camera filters in general, realize they don't work as well, and then eventually have to invest money into the more expensive one, essentially costing them more money in the long run. So what I recommend is if you need one of these filters, just go ahead and pay the premium price one time, take good care of it, and you're gonna have something that one, delivers a better result, but two, it's gonna be something that you don't need to replace essentially ever. Unless you break an NT filter or polarizer, it's gonna be something that can just live in your kit, and that money is gonna be well invested. The same thing goes with memory cards. Back in the day when I first started making YouTube videos and doing photography, I would go to Best Buy and buy the cheapest memory card that I could. Now, over time, these memory cards would eventually wear out, they'd break, they'd splinter, and they'd eventually get corrupted files, which was a huge issue. So I started investing my money into more expensive memory cards. My personal favorite is this Sony Tough card. I have a bunch of these and they've lasted me 4 years. I have no issues with these cards, and if I had just put the money into these initially, I probably would have saved myself at least a couple $100 over the years of buying these cheap cards, them breaking, and me having to replace them. Another big waste of money that I've made is something that I just thought I was going to use way more than I actually did. This is any iPhone camera accessory. So something like this cage is something that I did make a YouTube video on and I did really like it, but I found myself never actually using it. The same goes with these camera lenses by Moment. They're cool, they have an interesting effect. I really liked the YouTube video that I made about these products, but in my head, just like with the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, I thought I was going to use these things way more than I actually did. I thought by buying them, I would find a use for them, when in reality, I needed to have the use for them first and then go and buy them to fill this gap in my workflow. Now, one thing that is not included in this iPhone accessory waste of money is any filter for your iPhone. This Polar Pro case right here is something that I personally enjoy, and I love the fact that it's just a basic phone case. It doesn't feel too intrusive, but it easily gives you the ability to add a filter to these cameras. Now, the next huge waste of money I've made in my creative career is cheap hard drives. Now, from the start, if I had a time machine, I wish I just invested in a high-level storage system for my photos and videos, but instead, I did what a lot of people do, which is just continue to buy these cheap, lacy, rugged hard drives and have all my photos on there. They fill up and I have to buy another one and just repeat over and over. Now, the reason why this is a huge waste of money is, one, these hard drives cost money and I'm eventually going to have to buy a big hard drive system anyways. But two, it's also a waste of time. So I'm spending time going through different lacy hard drives. My files aren't very organized. I can't always find exactly what I'm looking for, and as a result, the time that I'm wasting doing this could be spent on something that's actually making me money. I could be filming a YouTube video, I could be going out to shoot photos for my next book, I could be outreaching to clients. There's so many different things I could do, but instead I'm searching through a number of different hard drives, solving this problem that I should have solved years ago by just investing the money necessary into a better storage system. So if you're a beginner out there watching this video, that's like the number one thing I recommend. Invest in a file storage system as soon as you can. It's going to make your life so much easier as you get into your career and you accumulate photo and video files. Now, the last thing on this list is this Leica 35mm lens. Now, this lens is pretty cool. It makes pretty decent photos, but I purchased this lens without it having a place in my workflow. I essentially made the mistake I talked about earlier of buying something thinking I'm going to find a way to use this rather than having a way to use it beforehand. This lens, every time I look at it and think about putting it on my camera, I have some apprehension and think, it's manual focus. Do I really want to deal with this? Sometimes I miss focus with this lens. Sometimes I miss shots. I'm going to go ahead and throw on my Sigma autofocus 24mm, which I think the quality of that lens is better and it's half the price. So purchasing this lens was cool. I've made some interesting photos with it. I think I've made my money back because of the photos from this lens being in my last book. But at the end of the day, I just never really had a use for it, and I got sucked into this almost gear acquisition syndrome that people talk about on the internet, thinking, oh, if I buy this lens, I'm gonna go out and do more cool stuff with it. When in reality, I needed to go out and do more cool stuff and then find myself in a position to actually need this. So that's probably one of the biggest mindset traps to avoid when it comes to cameras and lenses. You need a use for it before you actually buy it. But that is all the big wastes of money that I've made on camera gear in the last couple years. If you have anything that you want to add to this conversation, feel free to do so in the comments. I'd be interested to hear what things you've wasted money on. If you have any advice for other people, drop it down there. The whole goal of a video like this is just to help y'all get a different mindset when it comes to making purchases for your creativity. If you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you are not yet, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.